from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Thankful to be here with you this evening. We're live, we're national, and our phone number, if you want to join us on our late night national town hall conversation, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And the moment we've been waiting for this summer, all summer long, or at least for the last 38 days, we've been waiting for Que mala eres, how bad you are, how bad she is, to actually have an unscripted sit-down interview. Now, I don't know if that actually happened or not. I saw some clips from CNN. I saw her looking down a lot. And looking down to me means she's looking at her notes. And look, I'm not going to fault somebody for looking at their notes, but I am going to say that seems somewhat scripted, right? I mean, she's vice president of the United States. She should be able to sit down for, I think it was 18 minutes, and they stretched it out into a half hour or whatever it was, or commercials a little longer than that. But the reality is, she should be able to do this with the command authority of a vice president. And I do think that she was poised and she seemed confident and natural, although she did look at her notes. But moreover, I think the big takeaway for me is she really sounded a lot like Donald Trump. And this is indicative of politicians in general, right? Typically, politicians will run towards the middle after a primary. And I think you're seeing this type of thing here, right? Kamala was very pro-Hamas, very, very, very left-wing. And I think she tends to actually skew that way. But now she's, talking about bringing manufacturing jobs back to America. When did you ever hear Kamala Harris talk about bringing manufacturing jobs to America? But the reality is, Kamala Harris understands politics better than many others do, because she knows that many people who are going to be watching this are watching for the first time. Or they've heard her a couple of times and they're thinking, I haven't really heard much from this woman. Let me pay attention to what she's actually saying. And today, for the first time, they're going to hear her say these things. And she's going to come across as some sort of very middle-of-the-road, very level-headed person. And in my opinion, she needed to nail this, right? She absolutely had to knock this out of the park. Because if she didn't, people would believe everything Trump is saying, which in my opinion is absolutely true. But she let the cat out of the bag when she said that her values haven't changed. Listen to this.
Generally speaking, how should voters look at some of the changes that you've made, that you've explained some of here in your policy? Is it because you have more experience now and you've learned more about the information? Is it because you were running for president in a Democratic primary? And should they feel comfortable and confident that what you're saying now is going to be your policy moving forward?
Dana, I think the most important and most significant aspect of my policy perspective and decisions is my values have not changed. You mentioned the Green New Deal. I have always believed, and I have worked on it, that the climate crisis is real, that it is an urgent matter to which we should apply metrics that include holding ourselves to deadlines around time. We did that with the Inflation Reduction Act. We have set goals for the United States of America and, by extension, the globe around when we should meet certain standards for reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, as an example. That value has not changed. My value around what we need to do to secure our border, that value has not changed. I spent 2 terms as the Attorney General of California prosecuting transnational criminal organizations, violations of American laws regarding the illegal passage of guns, drugs, and human beings across our border. My values have not changed.
Her values haven't changed. You know, it's funny. Before defund the police, there were people out there beating the drum, radical leftists like AOC, all out crazy, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, right? Saying abolish ICE. Who joined her in that? That's right, Kamala Harris did. But her values haven't changed. Now she's talking about preventing human trafficking across the border, when she's the border czar that, in effect, with Mayorkas and Joe El Baboso Biden, opened that very border. She talks about defunding the police. And when she's not talking about defunding the police, she's helping to raise money for the bail fund for the people that want to kill, to burn, to loot, to murder. No bueno. If those values haven't changed, then why are you talking the way you are? Right? She's the one that wants to release violent offenders today, but when she was attorney general or a prosecutor, held an innocent man in jail. Who talks about eliminating tax cuts, right? When they talk about tax cuts for the rich, tax cuts for the billionaires. It's her. I've never heard a Republican ever talk badly about tax cuts. Right? I love tax cuts. What I love even more is when crazies on the left say, how are you going to pay for those tax cuts? Since when do you have to pay for a tax cut? Anyway, who's the champion on banning fracking? That's right, Kamala Harris. She is a champion of that. And now she's trying to be all over the place with it. I don't think it works. I don't think the people in Pennsylvania are stupid. And guess what? If you've ever met somebody who worked on a fracking rig, they make good money. They like making good money. And they know exactly who to vote for. And in a state like Pennsylvania, where she's going to really need to pull one over on these people, I don't know if she's going to be able to. Because I think every Tom, Dick, and Harry that goes back and forth to a fracking site, they know what's going on. They know their future hinges on who gets elected. They've already seen what Joe Biden can do. They already know the depths of what Harris is all about. It's going to take a lot of convincing, in my opinion. And she's out there. She's hitting it hard. I just don't know if it's going to be enough. Let's talk about her wanting to consistently end the use of fossil fuels. Or maybe confiscating guns from legal owners. All those crazy, wild statements that she has on a regular basis. She's one of the least friendly politicians I've ever seen towards the Second Amendment. If these are the values that haven't changed, then we're good. Then it's going to be clear as day. The problem is she's pretending like her values have changed. Anyway, I want to get into all the clips that we have on this interview, because all the joy in the world is not going to help anybody buy groceries. It's not going to help anybody pay their auto insurance. When I got to pay my big fat insurance bill that keeps seemingly going up every month, I can't do it with the joy that Tim Walz and Kamala Harris talk about. So we're going to talk about Tiananmen Timms and Kamala Harris and their interview with somebody who understands the media better than most. Newsmax CEO Chris Ruddy's coming right up. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night, your home for the best election coverage.
All right, familia, welcome back, amigos. We continue our conversation tonight. And again, if you want to join, it's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And I'm curious to know what the ratings for this interview with Kamala Harris, how bad she is. Vice President Harris with Governor Walz and Dana Bash in her first non-scripted, although it looked like she was looking at a lot of notes, interview. And when I think of ratings, I can't help but think of this record-breaking month that Newsmax had last month, up 68% since July of 2023, 46% since June of 2024. 22.6 million viewers tuned into Newsmax. Top 10 cable channel, total viewers for 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. Fantastic. The company was number 2 for viewer engagement for all of cable news in the 35 to 64 demo. And I bring that up because recently Newsmax announced that there's going to be an upcoming IPO. And to discuss that along with some of the reaction to Kamala's interview, we've got the CEO of Newsmax TV, Chris Ruddy. Welcome, sir.
Well, Rich, thank you for having me on. Always great to be on with you. And I love that quote, how she just changes her mind because she needs a few votes in Pennsylvania.
And
yeah, no, it's just, I call it an anointing. She was anointed the head of the Democratic Party, given the nomination. Like, there was no election. They keep saying they're out to save democracy, but they're destroying democracy. They don't believe in democracy. They could have easily had an open convention where she competed with other people and won and was a nominee. They had plenty of time to do it, and they decided to anoint her. And what's also amazing, I'm sure you know, the Media Research Center has a study out that showed since she was anointed the nominee of the party, she's gotten 86% positive press coverage. And Donald Trump's got 90% negative press coverage.
Unbelievable. Now, Chris Ruddy, I want you to listen to a quick clip from the interview tonight where, I guess to the surprise of many and maybe not the surprise of all, the interviewer, Dana Bash, asked a simple question, and we got a very interesting answer. Listen to this.
One, I am so proud to have served as vice president to Joe Biden. And 2, I am so proud to be running with Tim Walz for president of the United States and to bring America what I believe the American people deserve, which is a new way forward, and turn the page on the last decade of what I believe has been contrary to where the spirit of our country really lies.
But the last decade, of course, the last 3.5 years has been part of your administration.
I'm talking about an era that started about a decade ago, where there is some suggestion, warped I believe it to be, that the measure of the strength of a leader is based on who you beat down, instead of where I believe most Americans are, which is to believe that the true measure of the strength of a leader is based on who you lift up. That's what's at stake as much as any other detail that we could discuss in this election.
Chris Ruddy, she's talking about an era, but the only era I could think of is the last 4 presidencies, or the last 16 years, 12 of them, a dozen years, have been Democrats. How do you make sense of this?
Well, Biden's had 4 years. As you know, Rich, I've known President Trump for a long time. I've known him for almost 30 years. Sure. And I just think if this is an election between his record and Joe Biden's record, he wins. And on almost every measure, he's outperformed, did much better. Just the economic record. The economy was other than COVID, was really great. Huge amount of success in the growth of the stock market, up 20% during his period. Lowest unemployment in history and very low inflation. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, the 25 to 30% inflation we've had, that has hit everybody. If your home is worth $1 million, it's really worth $250,000 to $300,000 less due to inflation. So she's destroyed she and Joe Biden have destroyed the American middle class. And now they want a second term. And I think the public, the poll numbers show that on economic issues, President Trump wins.
Yeah, I agree. President Trump has the more solid record on this, and I think that's really what it comes down to. Is she's going to, use the gutter politics. She's going to try and goad him into shouting matches at the debate, and try to portray him as the way she's trying to paint him, right? As he's a fugitive, he's a felon, she's a prosecutor, she's the white knight come riding in on the horse to save America, and I don't know that works. As long as he stays on message, which is a great message, right? He's got the record to win this thing. What say you?
Well, I think that the thing for President Trump is to stick to policies, not make it personal. She's obviously very deficient in her abilities as a leader, as a executive, as a communicator. And she has a history of really just going along with whatever the latest thing in the Democratic Party is. If they're tough on crime in the Democratic Party, she's tough on crime. If they're weak on crime and they're defunding the police, she's defunding the police. It's not real leadership. So I think President Trump, this is his election to lose. But the media has been so much, and I think it's the importance. Newsmax has been growing tremendously, like you said. We have had record ratings for July, according to Nielsen. 22 million people have been tuning into Newsmax. We, over the past year, have led all of cable news for record ratings growth. That's just on our cable channel. It doesn't mention our streaming channel, our website, Newsmax.com, that millions of people are tuning into. So it's been a tremendous increase for us. And as you know, we earlier this summer announced that we're planning to go public. That has gotten a huge reception. We hope to be a public company subject to government approvals at the end of this year, early next year. And we're hopeful that we're going to have a tremendous impact on the American media landscape in the years ahead.
Well, I think you've had a tremendous impact thus far, and the trajectory seems to be nothing but positive moving forward, God willing. Now, for anybody that's listening that wants to learn more about the upcoming potential IPO, where do they go? How do they find out more about it?
Well, that is a great question. The public offering hasn't been approved yet, but we do have a portal where people can go not only sign up and get more information, but there is an ability for some eligible investors, and the requirements are set by the government, not by Newsmax, to buy early shares with a 7% dividend. They're great preferred shares, early IPO shares, and they can go to newsmaxinvest.com, newsmaxinvest.com, read all the information. We have a lot of great information up there. And I think, we've had over 300% revenue growth over the past 4 years. Every major cable company has signed record ratings growth. Reuters just came out with a study in June. They said there's 12 top news brands that Americans are turning to for news, and Newsmax was one of them. And we were the only company not backed by billions of dollars, but people like Rich Valdez and other conservative media, and they're telling people to go check out Newsmax, and people like what they see. Rob Schmidt and Greg Kelly and Greta Van Susteren. So newsmaxinvest.com.
Outstanding. Folks, check out newsmaxinvest.com. As Chris Ruddy said, CEO of Newsmax, I'm a big supporter of Newsmax. You can see my shiny head, and it's usually not that shiny because they do a great job in hair and makeup. Once a week, I'm on Newsmax. Chris Ruddy, I want to thank you for staying up late with us. I appreciate it. You are a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot.
You're a great American yourself. Thank you, sir.
God bless you. Folks, we're coming right back. I'm Rich Valdez.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. I had somebody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
right. But you're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5790. 5337 833 4Valdez. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, familia, welcome back. We continue our conversation, and I'm going to get to your calls. I see we got calls from Oregon, calls from Idaho, and more that are coming in. The lights are flashing. We're going to get those screened. But before I get to those, I want you to hear one more clip from this interview, which is so telling the way, I'm going to say the smugness that she uses in addressing the issue that, in my opinion, she has largely contributed to, the issue of the economy. By the way, the phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4Valdez. So Kamala Harris is sitting down with Dana Bash, CNN. She's doing her first interview. This is the one she's supposed to nail, knock it out of the park, and gain the trust of Americans. And anybody listening to this show for any amount of time, I think if you give me 3 days, you've heard me complain about Biden's horrible handling of the economy, the reasons for inflation, the American Rescue Plan, Build Back Better, etc. This did not help, right? COVID sent us in that direction. COVID spending, I should say, and then all the massive, $4 trillion in new spending that Biden did early on, obviously triggered this problem that we have. But all that being said, Kamala Harris is continuing to try and distance herself, like a good politician would, from Joe Biden, even though in the same breath she'll say Bidenomics is working, Kamalanomics is working. It's just fascinating to me. Listen to this.
One of your campaign themes is we're not going back. But I wonder what you say to voters who do want to go back when it comes to the economy specifically, because their groceries were less expensive, housing was more affordable when Donald Trump was president.
Well, let's start with the fact that when Joe Biden and I came in office, during the height of a pandemic, we saw over 10 million jobs were lost.
Why don't we start with the fact that when you and Joe Biden got into office, inflation was at 1.25%. Why don't we start with that? Irrespective of these people being out of work because the government was shut down because of Dr. Fauci's mandate. Let's just make that clear, right? And these states went buck wild with this, right? Your home state of California wouldn't even let the choir sing at church. I haven't forgotten about that. I don't think many Americans have forgotten about that either, that their grandmas and grandpas, moms and dads and family members were passing away by themselves or watching them on an iPad because they weren't allowed to be in the room with them because of these drastic, draconian regulations that came about with COVID. So that's what I remember you and Joe Biden coming into office with. Inflation at 1.25%. Go ahead, play the tape.
We were all tracking the numbers. Hundreds of people a day were dying because of COVID. The economy had crashed. In large part, all of that because of mismanagement by Donald Trump of that crisis. When we came in, our highest priority was to do what we could to rescue America.
I just have to say, mismanagement by Donald Trump. What did Donald Trump mismanage? Now, you can take exception to the fact that he should not have shut down the economy and should not have gone along with that. But be that as it may, that was more of a states thing than anything else. What was the mismanagement? Everything that was asked, he provided in record time. They said, we need vaccines. He said, you got them yesterday. Right? Operation Warp Speed. They said, we need ventilators because everybody's dying and we don't have enough of these machines. How dare you? How dare you? Right? Everybody tried to pin that on him. And he said, we'll use the National Defense Production Act and we will get these things made ASAP. And they did. New York City was upside down. They had no space for people who were ill. He brought in a hospital ship. I mean, you name it, and he responded. So I don't see the mismanagement that Kamala Harris is talking about. But she's trying to blame the answer to the economy on Trump and COVID. And that is, wow, right? I mean, just my head's exploding. How you can say that today that I'm paying $1,000 a month for 3 cars on an auto insurance policy, 2 of them are just liability only, the ones my kids drive. How on earth do you, with a straight face, tell everybody out here that's paying so much more for everything? Right? I went to get gas. It was $4.29 for whatever that is, Super Plus. $4.29. Trump's last day in office, I remember it being $1.96. How do you do that with a straight face? Go ahead, play the tape.
We know that we have inflation at under 3%. A lot of our policies have led to
One more thing. Inflation at under 3% is more than double, more than a 100% increase than what it was when they came in. How you do that and take, because it was at 14 or it was at 9 and now we're at 3. I don't care. It's more than double what it was under Trump. Let that sink in. Go ahead.
That America recovered faster than any wealthy nation around the world. But you are right. Prices, in particular for groceries, are still too high. The American people know it, I know it, which is why my agenda includes what we need to do to bring down the price of groceries. For example, dealing with an issue like price gouging.
Price gouging? Who's price gouging? I want to know. Raise your hand, and not if you're driving, but raise your hand if you think that the supermarket is price gouging. If you think that McDonald's and the rest of these places are price gouging because they're raising the price because they're paying more for beef. No, this is called inflation. And the fact that she doesn't understand it and wants to attack the business rather than attack her policies is insane. Go ahead.
To extend the child tax credit to help young families be able to take care of their children in their most formative years. What we need to do to bring down the cost of housing. My proposal includes what would be a tax credit of $25,000 for first-time home buyers, so they can just have enough to put a down payment on a home, which is part of the American dream and their aspiration, but do it in a way that allows them to actually get on the path to achieving that goal and that dream.
Listen, I love this idea, all right? I'm not going to vote for Kamala Harris, but if she can make this an across-the-board thing, I think a lot of people would find this attractive, but she won't, right? She doesn't want it to be an across-the-board thing because she keeps saying for first-time home buyers. What about second-time home buyers? What about the family in New York that wants to keep their home in New York and buy something in Florida so they have a vacation home, maybe somewhere for their kids to live when they go to college, if they go to college in Florida? What about those people have to pay through the nose? Is that how you're going to make up the difference of this what you're calling a tax credit? For these other people? This thing smells like fake, phony, and fraud to me. I would love to see a $25,000 tax credit for people buying homes. That would be fantastic. The issue is, I don't believe her. I wish I could. I really do. And Kamala Harris or any of your people, Tyler, whatever your name is, anybody who's on that team, if any of you are listening, you have an open invitation. We'll clear the schedule. Anybody who's here, I'll reschedule to take Kamala Harris. I would absolutely love to have an interview with her, and I promise to be as respectful as possible. I don't see how she makes this happen. How does somebody who wants to attack fracking, somebody that wants to spend money left, right, and center all over, right? The American Rescue Plan, Build Back Better Plan, the Inflation Reduction Act, money, 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 and more money. And then all of a sudden now, 5 minutes before Election Day, you're going to come out and say, well, for the last 3.5 years, I didn't do anything with Joe Biden to help first-time home buyers with $25,000. We didn't do anything with your taxes except increase them. But if you give me a chance, I will take a step towards a $25,000 tax credit for first-time home buyers. I mean, it's literally like a battered spouse looking at the abuser and say, listen, if you forgive me this time, I promise I'll never lay a finger on you again. I have no reason to believe this woman and every reason to think that she's lying. Anyway, I want to get to your calls. We're going to do that right now. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Look at Rich Valdez. He's now a radio host, and he's a great radio host.
America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
First thing I want to do is say, why isn't it live? It's not a live interview. It's an interview that's going to be taped and then edited and then put out. So that's not even an interview. Then she's doing it with her vice president sitting there. So she's not very smart. When they ask her a question that she can't answer, she'll just look at him. You answer it. I can't imagine. Everyone's waiting for her to do an interview because she's been a very big failure on interviews before, as you know, a tremendous failure. And she brings in the vice president, who, by the way, isn't so good himself. He's been a disaster.
Definitely not that good. Tim Walz. Anyway, that's El Trumpito weighing in on the interview, and I want to get you guys to weigh in on it as well. And somebody on social media sent me a comment that said, what an embarrassment it is that Kamala Harris, who's running to be the first female president in U.S. history, couldn't do her first interview as candidate, as nominee, without a man right by her side. I thought, wow, that's a leftist take if I've ever seen one. But man, it hits her right in the breadbasket, doesn't it? All right, let's get to your calls. Let's go to Monica, Pendleton, Oregon, KUMA. Monica, go ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez.
Hey, how are you doing this evening?
Good, thank you.
Good. Well, I watched Donald Trump's speech today over in Wisconsin. And, well, first, now I'll remember Kamala's vice president because Donald Trump called him Tampon Tim. And so hard I couldn't focus on the rest of it, but I knew the gist of what he was saying. But also, I like how Donald Trump breaks down things in detail, you know, like, for example, how the Democrats, Biden wants electric ran semi-trucks, electric cars, blah, blah, blah. And then the fact that the batteries are heavier, that's what Donald Trump was saying. I didn't know that. And we don't have, our infrastructure isn't ready for it. And, wow, that makes a lot of sense to me because, you know.
You know what, Monica, I think you're 100% right because what happens here, just an interesting story. Two things I want to mention. One thing is I went out with a buddy of mine who's got this really cool electric car. It's a BMW M Series i4, I think it is, and really nice car. What I found interesting was we went out and it was a very busy place we went to, but there was 4 spots open and it said parking for electric vehicles only. And it had the little, you know, charging thing. But he doesn't have a Tesla. He has a BMW. And I guess those were only designed for Tesla. And he couldn't charge his car in the EV parking spot. Thankfully, he had a charge. But my point is the infrastructure just isn't there. If you buy an electric car that is not like the Tesla, you can, you know, wind up being screwed when you go to park somewhere and thinking that you're going to get a charge and you can't. So that's one unanticipated consequence. Another one, I think, is what you're talking about. First of all, I can't imagine what a semi-truck that runs on electric would look like and how it would need to charge and how often. Sounds scary to me. It really does, because I think the idea behind a semi-truck is that they're doing a lot of domestic travel typically, you know, California to New York type of hauls, and they need to get the furthest amount of distance for the most economical fuel source, which I can guarantee you is not going to be electricity. And yeah, these batteries, they weigh a ton. You know, these cars, the EVs, they don't have engines, which is fascinating, right? There's like a small motor on each wheel that powers the wheel to turn. So that whole space under the hood is all battery. And these batteries weigh a ton, like literally, like close to a ton. It's a very heavy thing. And this is why they need to be so strong. And they're very quick because they go fast because they're so heavy. And And maybe I sounded like Kamala Harris there for a second, right? Trying to make one of those fifth grade explanations. But my point is, the cars are heavy, and they have to have a certain amount of power to move that big, heavy battery. And that heavy battery, of course, requires electricity, which is where the infrastructure comment comes from. So, yeah, it makes all the sense in the world to me that we're definitely not equipped for that. I go to the gym, and there's like 5 or 6 EV parking spots with charging. And it's not the rapid charger, it's the regular charger. I think one of them says rapid, and that's the one where there's always a line for that. You see a line of Teslas always trying to get to that one because these people want to go about their day, and they can't if they go to the other one, which could take you 8 or 9 hours to charge. So let that sink in for a second. Anyway, Monica, Pendleton, Oregon, KUMA. I'm out of time here, but we'll definitely be coming back. Thank you for your call. Always a pleasure to speak with you. The rest of your calls and more straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I'm so glad to be on your show, Rich. It's just an amazing broadcast that I hope the rest of America listens to every day.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, to the phones we go. We continue the conversation. Let's go to Ralph, Burlington, Vermont, WVMT. Ralph, go right ahead.
Hey, Captain. Just looking at the big picture in the north where we have to heat our homes and stay warm to get through the winter. The thing is, they talk about all this, mandates on like electric this and electric heat pumps and electric that. Excuse me. We have to buy our stuff way ahead of time to get the better price, and you never know what the market's going to fluctuate with. So it's like buying a cord of wood. Well, I'm telling you, you better get it early because, and so it's all about, the electricity. You have to provide that electricity with petroleum, fossil fuels, etc. So don't give me that thing about, saving the world with electricity and, carbon footprint and all that.
Who are we actually saving?
Right.
Not you and me, Ralph. I hear you, brother. And thank you for the call. You're 100% right. The cost that is associated with heating a home, and I live in the Northeast as well, it's insane. And you don't really have an option. Some people, right? My brother has a farm out in Pennsylvania. He uses a wood-burning stove and a really big fireplace, and that works for, to cover the whole house. But he's got to make sure he's got the wood, and it's work. But you can heat the home with some wood if you have a wood-burning stove. But if you don't, guess what? You're screwed, right? You've got to buy propane if you're in a propane area. You've got to buy oil or gas, and that stuff isn't getting any cheaper. And the fact that we're not procuring any more of it in the United States, other than what we've been doing because of the pause that they put on those leases on federal land, doesn't help. And it doesn't make things any cheaper for the end user, you and me and the American people. So you're right. The government is literally pricing people out of the ability to heat their homes, and that's a sad thing. Ralph in Burlington, Vermont, thank you, sir. Big shout out to WVMT. And stick around, folks. We're going to continue with some calls as well as more conversation. We're going to talk about, what do we have lined up right after this? Let me see here. Oh, we're going to talk about green energy. That's always very good. And Kamala's always talking about that, too. Plus, we got Jill Robin Payne coming up after that. Don't go anywhere, folks. I'm Rich Valdez. Live
from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to hour number 2 of our program. If you want to join us, we are live, late night, and national. 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And let me see, there's a couple of interesting items here I want to get to. We've got the press. They're going after Gold Star families over Arlington National Cemetery's the incident that they've been fighting over the last couple of days with Trump, trying to get them to flip, these people that invited Trump to be with them, to lay wreaths at their fallen family members' gravesite. Well, turns out now the press, the media, is trying to get them to go after El Trumpito, to turn states. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but it's just crazy to see how things are unfolding in this election. You've got them going after Gold Star families. You've got Jack Smith going after Trump yet again with a final Hail Mary, 2 months away from Election Day, trying to score one more there. You've got Harris and her campaign with Trump and the Trump people. Everybody's still saying we're on for the debate. There's still a debate over the muted mics, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody's pointing fingers. This one doesn't want a muted mic. That one doesn't want a muted mic. I don't know. It seems like an Oprah moment where she should come in and go, everybody gets a muted mic. And I think that's how they're going to end up. But that's that. Then you've got Senator Chris Murphy. He's from Connecticut. And he's out here defending Kamala Harris, who I like to call Kamala Harris, because she is so bad. And Kamala Harris is constantly on different sides of the energy debate. And he says the reason for that is because there's new technology. Listen to this.
The reason I was asking is because Vice President Harris was against fracking when she ran for president in 2019. Now her campaign says she supports fracking. She, of course, is doing this interview with CNN just in a few hours. How much do you think she needs to explain her change on this issue, her change on Medicare for all, her change on some border issues?
Yeah, I mean, does America really want candidates who never, ever change their position on anything, who never look at new evidence and come to a different conclusion? I'm telling you that part of the reason that I am more open to fracking today is because the technology has changed, because we can do it in a way that protects groundwater and protects the safety of local residents. I look at new information and occasionally I change my position. Now, Vice President Harris can explain for herself why she thinks differently about this topic, but I think it'd be insane to punish anybody in political life for not being open to new information.
So there's Senator Chris Murphy making the case that we need more flip-flopping. And listen, I understand positions evolve. I get that. The issue here is she is not just evolving on an issue. She literally is answering the question on the CNN interview like a lawyer. She won't actually say what she said. She'll just say, I said this on this date, and it has not changed since that date. Thank you very much. Next. You can't treat people like that. People aren't little kids, and they're not stupid either. Listen to Kamala Harris on the interview she just did with Dana Bash just a couple hours ago.
When you were in Congress, you supported the Green New Deal. And in 2019, you said, quote, there is no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. Fracking, as you know, is a pretty big issue, particularly in your must-win state of Pennsylvania. Sure. Do you still want to ban fracking?
No, and I made that clear on the debate stage in 2020, that I would not ban fracking. As vice president, I did not ban fracking. As president, I will not ban fracking.
In 2019, I believe, in a town hall, you said you were asked, would you commit to implementing a federal ban on fracking on your first day in office? And you said, there's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. So yes. So it changed in that campaign?
In 2020, I made very clear where I stand. We are in 2024, and I've not changed that position, nor will I going forward. I kept my word, and I will keep my word.
How's that for a little mic drop moment? Don't ask again. I don't want to have to get up out of my chair, right? That's what it sounded like to me. It sounds like Kamala Harris is getting a little testy there. So I want to get some reaction to her thoughts on energy there, as well as what's going on with China. Will China become a solar power, like an OPEC for solar power? I don't know, but we're going to find all of that out with our buddy Ken Rapoza. He's an industry analyst and used to be a reporter for the Wall Street Journal and then for Forbes, and he's been all over the world, knows this stuff a lot better than I do. Ken Rapoza, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Rich. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. So the audio you just heard of Kamala Harris with her position on fracking, from your perspective, how does that come across?
Well, politically, she has to say that because, as Dana Bash said, Pennsylvania is very important to her victory, and Pennsylvania is a fracking state, or a would-be fracking state, right? So she cannot come out and say that she's not going to be in favor of natural gas drilling in Pennsylvania or anywhere else, for that matter. I remember her saying that in 2019. Yes, unequivocally, I'm banning fracking, and of course the crowd cheered, all the environmental lobbyists are cheering, and so on. And again, let's not forget when Biden won, one of the things that he did was he stopped the construction, which may be just as important as fracking, but he stopped the additional construction of the Keystone pipeline that was going to connect to far western Canada. So, you know, I don't know. I think we just have to take her at her word when she says she's not going to ban fracking, because Biden administration didn't ban fracking. I think what you'd want to see her do is say we're going to reopen those Keystone connections and get them things built, because I highly doubt that she would do what Biden didn't do. We never heard Biden saying, okay, fracking is now illegal, you know, and you can't do it in these states. And I never heard of anything like certain types of regulatory matters or a tax that made it more difficult for those companies to do that. But I'm not an oil and gas guy that close, so I'm telling you this from maybe 5,000 feet up, you know. So I would assume she wouldn't ban fracking, but I think that if she wanted to get a little bit more friendly with the fossil fuel side of the energy equation, right, and at least not look like, you know, we're all going to power and heat our homes with solar and wind, then I think it would be good for her to be asked questions about Keystone. You know, your administration, led by Biden, I know it wasn't your decision, but Biden stopped the construction of further pipelines into Canada. So how about you? Will you bring that back? I think that's really the question to ask her at this point, because if you're going to have any sort of fossil fuel be an important base load, because of course, you know, the Democrats want to go totally post-fossil fuel. We know they want to go green. Then that would be a good signal. That would be a good signal to the market, and a good signal for like anyone who's worried that she's going to be an anti-fossil fuel person. She says, "Yep, I'm going to do that. I'm going to rebuild those. I'm going to get that construction going again." That would, yes, she would win. I think she would even win Pennsylvania and maybe even some states in the Midwest if she said that.
Right. But notice that she didn't say that. It was just, I will not ban fracking. And she was real matter of fact about it, because it's really a position that she's scared of taking, of being pro one way or the other. She's already gone the other way. Now, Ken Rapoza, I want to also get your take on this solar panel controversy that's going on, because China's been known for getting into things everywhere. I think they realize they have a bad rep for a lot of things all over the world. So they've started buying factories in India. They've started buying factories in Mexico. They've been buying factories in different parts of the world to continue what they do in China. But because people don't like made in China or what they do and the forced labor, they're doing it in other places. And they're coming under scrutiny for stuff like that with solar panels. So we're going to take a pause right here. But when we come back, I want to get your take on this, because there's an Indian solar panel company that's now facing scrutiny here in the U.S. for their possible links to China and forced labor. Surprise, surprise, what the Red Chinese will do. Folks, keep it locked right here. We're coming right back with industry analyst Kenneth Rapoza.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Rich Valdez, who, again, will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to him.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, we continue our conversation with Kenneth Rapoza. And if you want to join the conversation, feel free, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. So there's this Indian solar company, and U.S. Customs and Border Protection has detained nearly $43 million in shipments of electronic equipment from India since October under a law from 2022 banning goods made with forced labor. That's interesting. Now, CBP doesn't specify what types of electronic equipment that it has detained, but polysilicon, this is a raw material from solar panels, is identified as a high priority sector in the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act, UFLPA. And these solar panels have historically made up most of the stopped shipments in that category, according to sources. So I want to get to the bottom of this because it seems like the Uyghurs are always getting the short end of the stick here, and China's always trying to figure out another way to skin their cat. Kenneth Rapoza, tell us what's going on here.
Okay, so the Uyghur Forced Labor Law and that detainment of shipment, that's been happening since the Uyghur Law has passed. And from what I could tell you is Customs will detain shipments of solar panels, and it could be a big solar panel that's coming on a big cargo ship, or it could be something that's going to go to Lowe's, and you're going to buy the solar panels for your garden, right? So something smaller, right? And there's a company that's banned in Xinjiang province of China called Hoshine, and Hoshine is a huge producer of polysilicon materials that gets put into semiconductors or used to make solar cells. So perhaps that company was part of that supply chain. Customs caught it and said, okay, we're going to hold it. Usually what Customs has done, though, from what I could tell, is they've ended up releasing the product into the market, into the United States. So whatever they were suspected of, whatever the company that was importing it was suspected of, I mean, whatever company was exporting it, rather, was suspected of, Customs eventually just released it because most of the stuff gets captured and then released. Now, as far as China goes on the solar front, I'm surprised about the India side because India is not really a big player in solar at all. So when you look at solar, and that's of course when you look at the Democratic Party's idea to go post-fossil fuels, right? Solar is the lead steer and all that, followed by wind. But solar is more efficient than wind. You rarely see these wind turbines even spinning when you drive by. But China dominates that market. Almost the whole supply chain, they dominate. Wow. Of the top 10 biggest companies in solar, China's 8 of them. There's only one big American company there. It's called First Solar, publicly traded. And here's something that's interesting because we have the Inflation Reduction Act, which some call the Green New Deal. And, of course, Kamala Harris was talking about it tonight, the Dana Bash. She supports that. And that policy, that law, was designed to help U.S.-based companies, American companies, some of them very small, get bigger so they can compete with China all across the supply chain, on the solar panel supply chain, okay? But what's happened was Chinese companies have said, well, we're going to build these factories in the United States instead. And so what's happening is, of all the companies in solar that are getting the most benefit from the Inflation Reduction Act, ironically, are the Chinese multinationals. So not only are they getting benefits back home, right, whatever the subsidy may be back home, or interest-free loan, free land, of course, let's not discount, low-cost labor, of course, right, as well. But now they come to the United States, and they get to write off all the investment they make to produce solar panels or solar cells in the United States. So there's about 4 or 5 Chinese multinationals that are setting up shop here. Now, I'll give you some little breaking news. So there have been some bills, and they're bicameral bills, House and Senate, and they're bipartisan, Republican, Democrat, that want to make it so that Chinese multinationals cannot get this tax credit under the Inflation Reduction Act. You can't get it. If you're a German company, you can get it. If you're an American company, you can get it. But if you're a Chinese company, you already dominate. You mentioned, China becoming a solar OPEC. You already dominate we're not going to give you more breaks so you can continue to dominate. You can come here, you can build here. We're not going to kick you out. You can build here, but you're not going to get the benefit. You're not going to get the tax break. So there's a number of bills that have been proposed to have this come to fruition. So as you know, Congress is on vacation all of August. They're starting to come back now. And next week or the week after Labor Day, it was supposed to be China Week on the House. So China Week was a whole host of China bills that House Speaker Mike Johnson was going to bring to the fore. And this particular section of this bill, to remove China from this tax benefit and Inflation Reduction Act was canned. And there were some other bills, too, that would say if you're a venture capital firm or a private equity firm, we don't want you investing in companies that commerce is restricting access to American technology. We don't think you should be investing in that company. Or if you're a Wall Street firm, maybe you shouldn't invest in a company that's on what's called the entity list or a blacklist. I mentioned that company, Hoshine, for example. That company, it's publicly traded in Shanghai, and if you have a Vanguard emerging market fund, you might be invested in that company. So these guys are saying, we don't want you to do that. And Mike Johnson scrapped it from the bills. So, it's very hard to get things done on the China front. And you have people like Mike Johnson who's making sure it's not as easy as one would think it should be, because China is, of course, as everybody says, right, is our rival, and that should be taken care of. And there's a lot of roadblocks to it, and the people setting them up are on our side, we would say.
Yeah, interesting. That's interesting. Maybe we could set an interview up with the speaker to find out what's going on with that. Now, Ken Rapoza, in the minute or so we have left, where do you think this goes? Do you think that they'll continue to? Do you think China continues to move forward in India and other places with their forced labor stuff, or is this Uyghur protection bill going to kind of curtail that activity?
I think China sees the whole Uyghur forced labor bill as being a way for the West, namely the United States, to sort of, throw mud at China and make it, easier to compete with China. I mean, just sort of they see it as an anti-competitive law, right? They see it as being made up. Okay. And I don't know if, and in some regards, that law has worked, especially in areas like textiles and stuff like that. But there's a very strong textile lobby in the United States that helps make that happen as well. China, here's the thing about China, Rich, right? China had listened to the Washington and Brussels for years about building a post-fossil fuel economy, and China said, we're with you, we're going to do it. We're going to build your EVs, we're going to build your EV batteries, we're going to build your solar, we're going to build your wind, and they've done it. And they rule the roost. And so, the West is going to have to figure out what to do about it. And is it too late? I don't think so, but it's look, they're definitely playing on the back foot. It's 2 minutes to go, and they're down by 3 touchdowns. So we'll see.
Right. Ken Rapoza, let everybody know where they can find you if they want to hear more about the work you're doing.
Sure. You can find me at Coalition for Prosperous America, website prosperousamerica.org, and on Twitter, my handle is Brickbreaker. That's my old Forbes handle, Brickbreaker, BRIC.
Outstanding. Next time you come on, we got to talk about breaking bricks, because everywhere I go, somebody's telling me Bricks is coming to eat our lunch. I don't know if I buy it yet, but I'd love to have that conversation with you. Kenneth Rapoza, everybody, I appreciate you being here, brother. Have a good night. God bless. Folks, we're coming. Yes, thank you. And we're coming right back. We're going to continue the conversation with Jill Robin Payne on all sorts of stuff that you talk about with shrinks. So keep it locked right here. I'm Rich Valdez.
The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
So a girl in the backseat of a car was shot yesterday on Interstate 30 in West Fort Worth in an assault probably motivated by road rage, police said. A driver was on the road around 12:15, tried to pass a vehicle on the freeway, and then pulled parallel to it. And that's when this whole thing went down. A person fired multiple rounds into the vehicle in which the girl sat. shooting her in the leg. Thank God she's, not worse. But that's kind of crazy. And, a quick check of headlines, you see a bunch of these stories. Utah, man arrested in a road rage incident. Boston, man accused in deadly road rage incident, held without bail. Indianapolis, police urge patience as road rage incidents increase. Let me see. Man shoots and kills another one after road rage incident. That is in Austin, Texas. Laurel, Missouri. Shots fired lead to arrest after 49 road rage incidents. Crazy, right? So those are some of the things that we're looking at here. And this road rage stuff, let me tell you, I almost had my own encounter with that today. Nobody was pulling out guns, but this guy, I live in a very quiet little town, not a lot of cars on the road for the area that we're in. I could see New York City from, on a clear day, 4 miles from Times Square, but on the Jersey side of the Hudson. And I'm driving leisurely. I'm the only car on the road. And there's a car at a stop sign. And this car sees me coming, and right when I'm close to the intersection, decides to speed up and, get into the intersection and get in front of me. He's driving fast. Only to slam on his brakes where he doesn't have a stop sign, where somebody else is at a stop sign, and urges the other driver, no, go ahead, you go. With me nearly running into the rear end of this guy. And the other driver that was at the stop sign was like, why did you just stop? You have the right of way. And, and they didn't go. They refused to go. So then this guy looked like a moron and then started brake checking me, would go and then hit the brakes and go and hit the brakes and go and hit the brakes. And I was like, man, this guy's goading me. He wants to really get into something. And obviously I took the high road and I used mindfulness and I counted to 10 and I was, taking deep breaths, 4-4-4, box breathing, all that stuff. And ultimately, I turned on my Christian worship music and I called it a day. In years past, I'll admit, those things triggered me. And I was happy to get out of the car and find out what your problem was. But that's not me anymore. So I know if I've been through that, and I have a pretty cheerful demeanor most of the time, that could happen to anybody. So I want to get to the bottom of that with our guest, one of our favorite psychotherapists ever. She's the author of the Bempathy book series, which is Banter and Empathy. This third installment, Simplify communication by looking at the third side of the coin. Jill Robin Payne, welcome back.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. And speaking of empathy, that's one thing that's missing. It truly is. When you don't have empathy, you get frustrated, you have miscommunication, you get reduced tolerance, loneliness, isolation, blame, all these things, just from the lack of empathy. So that's one thing that's been decreasing in our world, and I think that's one big cause.
Jill Robin Payne, I've been doing some studying on this, not just for this interview, but in general. And I found that while many of us may not want to admit it, but selfishness, or I'm going to say self-absorbedness or self-centeredness, or just this focus on, what about me? that guides us in so much. And you combine that with a lack of humility, where it's like, no, you're not going to do that to me. I'll be damned if you're going to do that to me. And that level of unacceptance of people trying you, where it's taken as an offense rather than somebody just being a jerk and responding to their jerkiness, if you will. This is causing problems across the board. I see it it's what triggers a lot of road rage. It's what triggers people having negative exchanges at stores with people, at restaurants, as well as even in their interpersonal relationships, because there's this I'm going to go with inflated sense of self. And I don't know who does the inflating, whether it's external factors or oneself inflating their own self-importance. But when you have that and it's like, look, no, I've created this boundary for myself and these are the standards I maintain and you're going to talk to me a certain way. And if you don't, this is going to be the consequence. When you create this, which many would think is good and fair and noble and righteous, I think it also if it's not done appropriately, or if it's off or skewed, it creates a situation where you're ultimately going to have a confrontation with someone. And if you don't know how to confront someone and your temper is short, voila, you've got a recipe for disaster. How do we fix this?
Well, one, we need to first be aware of it, just like you're doing right now. Educate people on face-to-face is really important. And we need a balance in our life. So right now we're being inundated. And actually, Rich, they're even changing in the schools now. Now they're putting phones away. And some of them are even having to lock up the phones in high school. And so this is good because we've been having too much of the internet, too much of screen time, and they've done studies that it just changes your brain. They don't know if it's a permanent thing or not. And so we're creating people that are just thinking of themselves. You can say that they're independent versus interdependent, which means that I'm going to affect you. So if I'm interdependent, I'm still independent. It's just I know that my conversation with you is going to affect you. So if I start yelling and screaming, you probably hang up on me. Versus if I
might be good ratings, we might engage. You never know.
I don't know, but so my behavior is going to affect you, and people are not thinking that way. They're just thinking black and white thinking. If I text, it's one-sided. If I want to break up with you in a text, I don't have to respond. I just have to say, "Hey, Rich, I no longer want to talk to you. Bye," and then that's it. And it's one-sided. So this is what our culture is creating. So we just need to start modeling appropriate behavior and show people that we are social creatures and we still need physical touch. There was a study done a long time ago and basically showed that we do need physical touch. We will die without it. And so this is just something that we're going to just need to model. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they said, how can I show my kids how to behave? And I said, some of the best ways to do it is tell stories, show them stories, maybe even a movie that models this certain behavior, and then they will be more apt to do it. Whereas if it came from the parents, they might not. So these are just some suggestions.
Jill Robin Payne is the author of the Bempathy book series, and she's our guest. We're going to continue this conversation and more. And if you have a question for Jill Robin Payne and you want to push me out of our leather chaise lounge and jump in the couch so she can psychoanalyze you, feel free. Give me a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
The pressure for perfection appears more prevalent than ever in teens. That's according to a new study showing about 1 in 3 Gen Z kids feel like they have to be perfect. Girls were about 14 points more likely than boys to feel the need for perfection.
That's Andrea Fuji with ABC News talking about a Gallup poll that surveyed 1,600 young people ages 10 to 18, and about 1 in 3 Gen Zers feel they have to be perfect. Like she said, especially true for girls, who are about 14 points higher to feel like this than boys are. And this perfectionism can have negative effects on teens' mental health, including low self-esteem, anxiety, depression, and other mental health issues, which in some part, based on what Jill Robin Payne told us, could be alleviated with a hug, because physical touch helps all of those areas, according to the study we were just talking about. But back to this study. This is interesting. And Jill Robin Payne, this is one of those things that I feel this study looked at young people, but this is something I think that affects people across the board. Would you agree?
Yeah, I agree. And back in the day, this tells my age, Rich. I don't know if you even remember her name. Her name was Twiggy. And okay, yeah. And so Twiggy was it, and she was a toothpick. Who'd want to look like her? Anyway, we all wanted to look like her, and people would become anorexic. The difference between then and now is we turned off our TV. Our parents limited our use of television and media, and now things are limitless. And not only that, these poor kids do these things called group chats, and a lot of them
Yeah,
right. Well, this is the problem. So we have high school pressure that's 24/7. Rich, you and I, we could go home and leave high school at high school. And now they are pressured 24/7 because their phones are with them all the time. I have parents say, oh, well, I have them turn them off. But still, parents need to understand when they have their phone out, even if it's turned off, they've done studies that you still are paying attention to that phone. So really, we need to get those the phones out of the way of the kids. That's one thing. But these group chats that they're in, they're pressured. Some of the kids might like some of the people in the group, and some of the people they don't like. And I know this because I hear from parents and I hear from kids. Mm-hmm. And they're pressured to stay in the group because, God forbid, if they get out of the group and they go to another group, what's going to happen? How are these people going to think of them? The peer pressure that's there. So what people need to do, parents need to give the kids, because parents feel they're fighting against the school, fighting against these phones. They need to have some stability at home and know that they're safe at home and do some fun things at home. I tell parents to have a family night once a week. We used to, I don't know what you did with your family, but we used to go to my parents' room. We'd sit down, we'd watch United Kingdom, and then we'd watch Walt Disney for 1 hour, and then we'd talk about it. And so I think that this really needs to be done, and I know parents are busy. I know that they are. I hear it all the time. We need to make time for these kids so they feel safe enough to talk to them about what's going on in their world.
Excellent points. And yeah, Jill Robin Payne, with my children, we went to church. We had a midweek service that had like a Bible study. And I would, beat them over the head with their Bible. That's what we did. And, now that they're older, they thank me for it. But I want to go back to something you said that is interesting, right? We're here. The focus of this study is on youth because 1,600 youth were interviewed, ages 10 to 18. Right. But everything you just described, I think, describes almost every professional I know. One of my dearest friends, he's a very successful manager, director, executive in the healthcare world. He works for a hospital. And purchasing and materials management. And I can tell you, whenever I see him, he looks exhausted. And I'm like, how's everything going? He's like, oh, good. I'm just so busy at work. And sometimes when we're hanging out, he's like, oh, hold on, I got to take this call. And so you're talking about leaving high school at high school. I think adults can't leave work at work. And they're coming home and they're doing Zoom calls. And it's like work doesn't stop at 9 to 5 ever. And this has been going on since the... I guess the advent of the BlackBerry, 15 or 20 years ago. But I think what has been going on with adults with this electronic leash and not being able to say no to work is now happening to our children with their social lives, and it's becoming problematic.
It is. And so in my book that you talk about, which is Empathy, Simplifying Communication by Looking at the Third Side of the Coin, I've got something that's called Map of Reflection. It's a little bit difficult to just explain right here, so I'll do it real quick. But basically, it's a map of you reflecting on your life and the people, places, and things that you have in your life, and it helps you map out where they are and where they should be in your life. So I have different layers, but one layer, you're in the center because you're the most important. And then I have way out the last circle, it's the spring cleaning, and I have it in blue, Rich, because it's like water. the people there, people, places, and things will ebb and flow into your life. We need to prioritize. We have too many things in our life. And believe me, not all is that important, but you need to map it out. So my map of reflection in my book sort of goes through what you're talking about, because people are just overwhelmed and inundated. It's sort of like, I know this sounds awful, but it's a bunch of caca all over you. And if you have a bunch of caca, it stinks, you can't see. And so we got to clear that off. And that's what this map of reflection helps. And that's what you're talking about. He doesn't know how to prioritize, so he has to do everything, and you can't do everything.
100%. Folks, we're on with Jill Robin Payne. By the way, I have the book that she's talking about. I highly recommend getting a copy. If you guys want to be cool like me, I have an autographed copy. I don't know how they can get an autographed copy. Jill Robin Payne, let them know how they get an autographed copy.
Well, they can send it to, just go to my website, and it'll give you all the information. That's JillRobinPayne.com.
And we're coming right back with Jill Robin Payne.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And again, I want to remind you the name of the book Jill Robin Payne has. There's 3 of them. But Bempathy, Simplify Communication by Looking at the Third Side of the Coin. There's 3 of these. It's a trilogy, and I recommend getting all 3 of them. And it really lays out, it's not like a type of book. It's not a story, right? This is an actual, like a workbook that you can actually write in, and there's a little roadmap at the end. It has these little colorful emojis where you can really match things up with the people, places, and things that matter that you have to kind of figure out. I recommend it, and I think you should check it out. But I want to talk about something that I think most people deal with, Jill Robin Payne, and that is how not knowing how to deal with conflict really robs us of our peace and joy, right? We could be in a pretty good mood, and then all of a sudden you get into some sort of conflict with a child, with a spouse, with someone at work, with some idiot on the road like me this morning. It could be with whatever. And I realized this today, that could have, in some situations, years past, put me in a negative headspace where I would have been angry all day, or at least for a good 2 or 3 hours. And not knowing how to get rid of that anger. I've been working out now for 4 days a week, sometimes 5. So that's obviously very helpful with, getting rid of a lot of that energy. But for people that aren't exercising all the time, what are some of your tips on dealing with conflict resolution or dealing with conflict, period, so that they don't get into the conflict? How do you avoid it?
Well, sometimes you can't avoid it because we're all different people, and some of us, we have moods. So I have that other, something else that I call dynamic watchfulness, is basically you have another person in your life that you can talk to, that you can talk about things to help you see the other side of the coin. That's one thing.
Good idea.
Real important today, because what happens is when you see something negative, a lot of us get honed in on that and we get tunnel vision and we can't see anything else. There's another thing.
Well, we'll leave the other thing for next time. But yes, take a deep breath and go to Jill Robin Payne's website, JillRobinPayne.com. I recommend getting the book and getting in touch with her. Jill Robin Payne, I wish we had more time. Thank you for being here. You're a gem.
Thanks, Rich.
Bye. You bet. All right, good night. God bless. Folks, we're coming right back with all of your calls and commentary with open phones across America. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. If you want to join us, now's the time to do it. It's open phones across America. Here's the number, 833-4825-337-833-4-Valdez. And today was the big day. Kamala Harris, the vice president, running for president, had her first sit-down interview as the Democrat nominee for president of the United States. And as you would imagine, she didn't do it alone. She needed someone to hold her hand. There he was, Tiananmen Tim Walz, right there next to her, occasionally chiming in, but for the most part, just echoing what Kamala said, saying they have similar goals and whatnot. But we have a couple of clips of her. We had a bunch of them. Probably won't be able to get through all of them. But I want to get your reactions to this Kamala interview from what you've heard so far, and I'll play another one for you. But the interview, again, my opinion was she needed to knock this out of the park. This was a pre-taped interview, and as far as I know, I don't know that it was taped to live, meaning they taped it and there was no editing. They just did it at an earlier time, which is, if you're ever going to do anything that's pre-taped, I would recommend doing it that way so you don't lose the integrity of what you did. You don't want to go and edit things and polish and clean up and things like that. I mean, to a degree, there might be some of that, like to fit into commercial breaks and things like that, but without changing the interview. Maybe cutting out, okay, thanks, I got to go right now. We've got to catch a flight. That's not really pertinent to the interview. So, if, after her final statement that's on the record for the interview, you can cut out stuff like that. But I don't know what they're doing, right? I don't know the extent of their editing. Back in the days when I worked with Project Veritas, I always found it so interesting that they would always attack my guy, James O'Keefe, always saying, that he highly edited. It was and this highly edited footage. And I would think, what TV footage isn't highly edited? By the time even live news, they're rolling a package typically while they're doing the news. That's, a bunch of B-roll that's already highly edited. Everything is edited in the news. You interview somebody for 6 or 7 minutes on the street, and you've got 28 seconds to do it on TV, you're pulling out the best sound bites of that interview that you can get, that get the gist of the conversation. That's highly edited, right? And I just always thought it was so duplicitous, so what's the word? I guess hypocritical, that they would, highly edited was something they did all the time, but when O'Keefe did it, it was a problem. So for years, he always released the raw footage of whatever encounter that, he was releasing the edited version of as the final release. And he would, give. And then one day he said, you know what, I'm not doing it anymore. I'm not going to release all the raw footage, because that's the equivalent of a reporter, putting out a story and also giving you their notebook, where they take all their notes and speak with all their sources and whatnot. And he did it for the sake of transparency, and I respect that and commend it. But ultimately, I think he was right. When was the last time you saw a reporter, pull their little notepad out of their pocket and just throw it on the table and go, hey, here's the story. It's published in the newspaper. But if you want to see all my notes on it here, you could do that too. You've never seen that. And it would never happen. So, I mean, he's really just following the standard that the media set. But anyway, that was a little bit of a tangent and a little bit of an aside. But I have a problem with the interview being taped. I think it should have been a live interview. I think the people deserve that. There's a degree of reality, right, that goes with live stuff. We're live right now. I'm talking right now. If you can hear me right now, I'm talking right now. Some stations may carry this show on a delay, and I get that because of scheduling and whatnot. But the majority of people listening to this show are listening to it live. And you need that, especially if you're talking about things that are important, things that are like news related. That's what makes it new, right? The new in news is that it's happening in real time and that you're getting it live. So anyway, that's my thought. Anyway, I had queued up a Kamala Harris clip. Count Delacula, what did we discuss? She thinks that history is going to be kind to the Harris-Biden administration. Listen to this.
I think history is going to show a number of things about Joe Biden's presidency. I think history is going to show that in so many ways it was transformative, be it on what we have accomplished around finally investing in America's infrastructure, investing in new economies, in new industries, what we have done to bring our allies back together and have confidence in who we are as America and grow that alliance, what we have done to stand true to our principles, including the one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I think history is going to show not only has Joe Biden led an administration that has achieved those extraordinary successes, but the character of the man is one that he has been in his life and career, including as a president, quite selfless and puts the American people first.
What did she just say? I'll give you $1 if you could tell me what she said. She just said a lot of words. That was a perfect word salad soundbite, right? Because Joe Biden is a man and a man with ideas, and he's a selfless man, and he puts the American people first. Yeah, she's not saying anything here. These are some platitudes she wanted to play. Listen, I think when you do 18-minute interview and you took that long, was that a minute and a half or close to it? That's a waste. She needed to say, look, Joe Biden's fantastic. I love it. Let's move on. It's me we're talking about here. This is what I'm going to do for America. Instead, she didn't do it. She didn't create any contrast or any daylight in between her and Biden, who has destroyed the economy. And if she doesn't do a good enough job saying, hey, look, this is why I'm not Joe Biden, she's going to, I can only imagine that the American people are going to hold her responsible for the damage that was done while she was vice president. I don't see how you get to run as, I'm not really the vice president. You run as if you're the outsider and Trump is in office. Trump is not the incumbent. And trying to make him look like one, I think may backfire. I could be wrong. It could be November 6th and, you guys will all be calling me going, Rich, you were wrong. She won, blah, blah, blah. But I just don't see that happening. I don't see how she lives this down unless they make it about something else, right? And Trump helps them make it about something else. And I don't think he's going to do that. So I think she's going to have to own up to this stuff and disassociate from Biden. And I just, with comments like that, I don't see how she's going to do it. Anyway, I want to get your thoughts on this. We've got nearly a full call board. Let's see. West Point, is that Missouri or Mississippi? Caller 4. Say it again, real loud. There we go. All right, let me see. Tampa, Florida, Columbia, South Carolina. Let me see. Let's see who's first here. Let's go to either Stephen or Stefan, Utica, New York. Go right ahead.
Hi there, Rich. How are you?
Doing a lot better than you. What's going on?
Well, I think Kamala Harris did a good job in her interview, and I think she's going to win the presidency.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for that. I really appreciate the update. Let us continue. Where do we go from here? I'm trying to be nice, right? I don't want to take the bait there. Let me see. Where do I go here? Let's go to Van, Columbia, South Carolina, WQXL. Van, go right ahead.
Hey, Mr. Valdez, how you been?
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah, I did not hear the interview this evening, and I haven't. I work weird hours, and anyway, and the clip you just played, I was laughing so hard because there used to be this old comic strip called Bizarro.
Yeah.
And it's just all. I'm 61 years old. Okay, I know who I'm voting for. Blah blah blah. But they're like, I think they really think a lot of people are dumb, man. And I'm not calling anybody dumb, man. I'm dyslexic myself. You know what I mean?
Me too. I was going to say me three.
Bizarre, man. What she just said is like, whoa. Yeah. And anyway, your take was right on. The way that the media is, it's so corrupt, man. You can't, and it is a little disgusting that they did it this way. Come on. I got to give it to Trump. He'll stand in front of the helicopter for a half hour and talk to him.
And answer all the questions.
But, yeah, and this was just so phony. And God bless you and your family, Mr. Valdez.
Oh, thank you, Van. That's kind of you. I appreciate it. Big shout out to Van and everybody listening in Columbia, South Carolina, WQXL. Let us continue here. Where do I want to go? I want to go to my buddy Doc, Wilmington, Delaware, WDEL. I haven't heard from you in a little bit. Doc, tell me, what are your thoughts on this Kamala Harris interview?
I want to touch on two topics. First is Kamala Harris. You touched upon it before in your show, but my phone was out for a while, so I couldn't touch on it. The second topic would be what I think are and answer questions about the Trump assassination. She proved tonight to me, along with Tim Waltz, that never in my modern memory, and I'm 70 years old, I go all the way back to President Nixon, whom I voted for in 72. Never in my modern memory have we seen a team of people that is as incompetent and unqualified for higher office, the highest two offices in the land, as these two clowns. She has very poor diction compared to President Trump. She has a whiny voice. She just is not the kind of person you want to put up there. And if they're the two best that the Democratic Party can put up there, then I say they're in trouble against President Trump. As long as he can keep his cool, he's going to walk away with this thing. And that's what I'm getting here in Delaware. There are a lot of people in Delaware that are very dissatisfied with Biden, even more so with Kamala Harris, even though we're a very deep blue state. And lastly, about President Trump's assassination, I'm not going to get into conspiracies on national radio, things I can't prove. I'm just going to ask your listeners to view the comments online and on his podcast of Dan Bongino, a former federal agent, and listen to what he has to say about all this stuff. And number two, I think there are going to be many unanswered questions about the assassination that have to be answered.
Yeah, well, first, I'll say this. Dan, I've worked with Dan in the past. I consider Dan a friend, former Secret Service agent. He's very competent. And he knows what he's talking about. And he's usually 100% right on the stuff he weighs in on. And he was just testifying in Congress yesterday. I wasn't able to get the audio, but I know he was up there. It was yesterday, the day before. And because he's been, blowing stuff wide open on this. And that's the beauty, I think, when you're in a position where you have expertise and you're able to tell it like it is. And Bongino's right. There were so many failures. I mean, so many failures that one has to beg the question, why? Are we that incompetent? Or are we that underfunded? All of which is true. We may have incompetence issues and we may have funding issues, but it still doesn't change the fact that it's like a superstorm, right? Like Superstorm Sandy. Like everything had to be in the right place at the right time for this to be as screwed up as it was. This spectacular screw up that they had. And I've got to say, I would submit that even whether it was by, how there's lies by omission, I would say that this was an assassination attempt by people probably turning a blind eye. People becoming so complacent and or lazy and or not giving a flying F that because of personal differences or whatever, maybe because they were just told, hey, take a walk, or hey, do this, or hey, you can't go in today, but tell so-and-so because so-and-so's the laziest person I know. Put them on the job. Whatever it is. I've seen all sorts of engineering happen in my time in government, and that's how they do things. So I don't think you're off by a ton here. I don't think it's a conspiracy. I think we're unraveling the truth, and I hope we get it sooner than later. Doc in Wilmington, Delaware, thank you for the call. WDEL. I see more calls coming in now. We're going to get to you momentarily. 833-482-5337.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
A lot of people say I do a tremendous job. And Rich Valdez does a tremendous job, I can tell you that. He's a fantastic person.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
You had a lot of Republican speakers at the convention. Will you appoint a Republican to your cabinet?
Yes, I would.
Anyone
yes,
in mind?
I would. No one in particular in mind. We got 68 days to go with this election, so I'm not putting the cart before the horse. But I would. I think it's really important. I have spent my career inviting diversity of opinion. I think it's important to have people at the table when some of the most important decisions are being made that have different views, different experiences. And I think it would be to the benefit of the American public to have a member of my cabinet who was a Republican.
Well, I want to thank Vice President Harris for that because I'm open. I'm open to serving in her administration. I'm glad she brought it up. I thought she was going to keep that private. But, yeah, just imagine, right, if I could be there with Kamala Harris serving at the pleasure of, God forbid, President Harris. She would never hire me, right? Let's be real here. I don't know what Republican she's, maybe Liz Cheney, maybe, and not even, I don't think she would like Liz Cheney either. Outside of her disagreements with President Trump, Liz Cheney had a pretty conservative voting record in Congress. Maybe Adam Kinzinger? I don't know. I don't know which Republican she's talking about, but I don't think for a second it's Rich Valdez or anybody else that I know, because that would just be insane. But I want to get your thoughts. Let's continue. Let's go back to the phone. Sandra, Dothan, Alabama, WDBT. Sandra, go ahead.
Yeah, just a couple of things. You had played where she talked about how the Biden administration is going to go in history. She mentions all this stuff. She didn't say anything about the military people that got killed in Afghanistan. She didn't talk about they never even have talked with those families of those soldiers that got killed. She didn't talk about the $85 billion of equipment they left over there. And she didn't talk about what a wonderful job they have done with this economy, with all the lies about the jobs, all the inflation, and all this stuff. If these people believe that she's changed her mind on anything, she has changed her mind, but it'll be worse. It won't be better. And really, what has Joe Biden done for 50 years? He's come out to be a multi-millionaire. And where was he the other day when Trump was putting up the wreath? He was sitting on the beach. And the families that lost their children, the soldiers, they invited Trump to come. So evidently they have some respect for Trump. I read an article, but I mean, to me, I think the people that will vote for Kamala are the ones that are on the take. The ones that are all getting the handouts are the ones that are going to vote for her.
Yeah, great analysis, Sandra. I think you're spot on with that. And, you know, and the question you asked, where was Joe Biden? It's the same question I would ask Vice President Harris. Where has Kamala Harris been the last 3.5 years? She's saying, I want to be your president, America. And I'm asking, where have you been? Where have you been while your buddy Joe Biden was raising inflation? Even if you want to say you had nothing to do with it, where were you? What did you do to stop it? And why on earth do we think that we have to wait till November so that you can show us what you're made of when you've had a chance as vice president to even speak up? She's never spoken up. Matter of fact, she just gave the most glowing recommendation to Joe Biden. So I'm with you, Sandra. These people are fake, they're phony, and they're fraud. Thank you for your call. WDBT Alabama in the building. Folks, when we come back, we're going to talk about El Tren de Aragua, the Venezuelan gangs that are taking over buildings in Colorado and worse. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Call now 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
The Aurora Police Department announced today that it's joining forces with Colorado State Patrol and the Bureau of Investigation to create a special task force to address the city's concerns about Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua. APD says the task force's main goal will be to assist agencies around the area by maximizing resources and sharing intelligence in ongoing investigations. Aurora Mayor Mike Kaufman says this task force has been discussed and even put into practice for a time already, and says one of their biggest efforts right now is engaging with and learning from the community.
Certainly, there's a lot of Venezuelans that have been here for a long time, and they're not a part of that recent wave that came came over. I mean, they came through sponsorships and they were completely vetted when they came over. But whatever connections they have within this migrant community, to please urge them to cooperate with law enforcement.
Kaufman says he can't say too much about what the task force exactly will be doing so that there aren't any investigations that will be compromised, but he does say he believes that allocating more resources to this issue is necessary, and he wants his residents to know it is something that he and APD are both taking seriously. In the newsroom, Nate Belt, Fox 31.
So these gangs or a gang in Aurora, Colorado, has taken over a very large apartment building, and we played the report the other night, and this is a follow-up to that. The politicians have responded with lip service. We're going to create a task force. Just imagine. And again, I wish this is where I have such an appreciation for video, but I'm going to do my best to describe it. Think of a tenement building and several young men, skinny, tall, wearing sweatpants, T-shirts, masks on their face, not like a COVID mask, more like a bandana wrapped around their face or a ski mask. Baseball caps with what look like automatic weapons. I can't really tell from the video, but even if it's a semi-automatic weapon, like an AR-15, that kind of gun, and a couple of them with handguns, 4 or 5 of them, and they're going door to door in this building. What they're doing door to door, I don't know. They're saying, hey, get out of here. I don't know if they're using those apartments to cook up meth or whatever they're doing. I mean, obviously, they've taken over. They've made this their headquarters, and the gangs are in control. And what do the politicians say? We've created a task force. We take this very seriously, and we want the residents to know we have. We're working with the state police, and excuse me, these people want a SWAT team. These people want the National Guard. They don't want to hear some politicians say that they're working on a task force. That is the weakest response. I'm going to guarantee that guy is a Democrat, because that's how Democrats operate. Republicans seem to just do things different, and again, probably why I opt to vote for Republicans. And I'm no fan of all Republicans. I can be partisan, but I don't think I'm super partisan. But it's just when you can start spotting these people a mile away because of the way they respond, it's that big government approach. It's that I don't care about the people approach. That's what bothers me, right? That's really what pisses me off. When you hear an audio clip like that, these people, just think of these, of anybody. I just think of members of my family, my mother, my father, God rest their souls. But if they lived there, my mom was an oxygen-dependent woman. If somebody with a rifle came to her door, what was she going to do? Pray? Thank God she was a woman of faith. What was my dad going to do? He was going to give you hell, that's for sure. My dad had big hands that were like rocks. But again, 80 years old. You could take out one of them, maybe 2. There were 6 of those guys, and they were armed. How do you defend these people but for sending in the National Guard or the SWAT team or the state police SWAT team? So when you have the politicians say, look, we're not going to tell you what we're doing, but we're working with the state and we're working with locals and county, and that's not what people want to hear. People want to hear the sergeant that's pulling up to the scene saying, how you doing? Police here. I just want you to know we just locked up a bunch of bad guys and we're taking them out of here. And, at least for tonight, you guys are safe. If it happens again, we'll be back. We're going to have a patrol outside. We're on this. But they're not. You know why? Because they've been told, we don't like you. We're going to defund you. You're racist. You are the enemy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what the politicians believe. And even if they don't believe it, that's what they're told to believe so that they can maintain their base of power with the left wing and everybody else that's, takes sport in hating cops. Absolutely disgusting. Let's go to Tampa, Florida. Streaming from Chicago, WLS, Eduardo, welcome.
Rich,
Go right
I'm
ahead.
so proud of you that you started Yeah, I can hear you. I'm so proud of you that you started talking about this, because this is something that they're going to have to send in, like you said, like the SWAT. There's a show during the day. I won't say their name. They're about to be canceled next week, thank God. But they don't talk about this. They're in Colorado, and they should be talking about this. They need to harass Kamala Harris every day about this, because this is outrageous. Eventually what's going to have to happen is that we're going to have to take military action in Venezuela. That's what's going to have to happen.
That's what Trump would have done. I guarantee you. Trump would have, he would have called Maduro and said, hey, listen, You're going to have to start taking these people back, or I'm going to have to flex some muscle. Just like he did with Mexico when he said, they said, no, we're not doing that. And he said, all right, I'm going to label you as a narco-terrorist nation, and then I'll be able to use the military against you instead of using sanctions or this or that or this type of diplomacy. And next thing you know, they said, yes, we like the Migrant Protection Protocols plan, the Remain in Mexico plan, and we're going to keep people here. And they did, right? They played ball because they had to. And that's what you got to do. You're 100% right, Eduardo.
Yeah, ask Ms. Harris, what do you think about this sanctuary city thing? I mean, they need to remove this because now they're going to be disguised as Uber and DoorDash. That's another story that's out there, too. So this is ridiculous. Crime is going to be going up. You're going to have inflation going up, too, because of the theft and all this. It's ridiculous. It's going to have an all-around effect on life for all Americans.
Yeah, you're right. The quality of life for all Americans is going to suffer, is suffering. We're seeing it happen in Colorado. This is what Kamala Harris in charge looks like, right? Her and her Joe Biden, who's in absentia, right? We don't even know where he is half the time. But the proof is in the pudding. This didn't happen when Trump was there. It's happening now. It's clear as day. And that's what people are going to have to realize when they go to vote. Eduardo, thanks for the call, brother. Appreciate you listening to the show. Let's continue. Arizona, streaming on richvaldez.com. Let's go to Pat, Sedona, Arizona. Go right ahead.
Hey, Rich, thank you. Sad, do you know that they had a gun battle at a Target earlier this month of August in Denver with these gangs? And it's only time that they start doing this in a lot of the southern and Midwestern states. They come in. I saw these guys while I was on the border, military age, in shape, young men. And this is what they're doing. And these are the gotaways. These are the gotaways. And in Colorado, man, I love that state. I lived there for 55 years. And I'll tell you what, when the Democrats started taking over, they all started getting this, oh, gosh, these people are living such a high life, and they're rich and they're white. You know what? We all been mixing. Colorado is a Spanish word. It's not all white there. It's always been a pretty good mix of people who work hard for what they have. And it's being ruined. It's like that gentleman in Florida said, if they don't bring in the National Guard and nip this in the butt quickly, it's going to get out of hand and it's going to spread all over the state. And I tell you what, they're not like us in Arizona. Arizona is the civilian population here are well armed. The people have
Pat, this was part of the deal. And maybe when you lived there for 55 years, you remember this. But there's a book called The Blueprint, and it talks about the Four Horsemen and how Jared Polis, who was a low-level politician at the time, used the LGBTQ community to raise money all across the country to propel himself to become governor and then to get into Congress or vice versa. And they systemically took over, and they turned Colorado from a red state into a blue one. And I remember at the time, 15 years ago, people were well armed in Colorado too. You had people doing open carry, and that doesn't happen now. People are afraid. People are shunned. It's just crazy, and it kind of went from blue Denver to everywhere else. And second point, how did you live in Colorado for 55 years? You don't even sound like you're 55 years old, Pat.
Oh gosh, I hate to tell you how old I am. I'm up there, Rich, but thank you. I lived in the mountains where I lived. I lived in the Roaring Fork Valley, which is about maybe 190 miles away. And Denver was always pretty much blue. And then there's Boulder County near the university. That's pretty much blue. But it's all
wherever there's university, it's always blue.
Yeah. And it's sad because that is a beautiful state. It is a beautiful state full of beautiful people who are multiracial, and they live together. But it's not going to be that way. These gangs are serious. And with that gunplay they had at that Target, the cops go, oh, my gosh, what's happening? I mean, it's like, I know that maybe they've been hiding out or something inside the police station, but the good cops have been run off. They've run a lot of good police officers, investigators, and they're going to do a committee to find out what's going on. I can tell you what, let the people tell you what's going on. Get their governor of Colorado and a couple of state legislators, go to that area in Longmont and talk to those people. Have a town's meeting, and they'll get an earful. They really will. And will they care? I don't know. I mean, look at Chicago. I mean, the gunplay in Chicago. It
doesn't end.
Oh, my goodness. You know,
it doesn't end.
It's sad.
It really is. Pat, I got to pause right here. I got to take this commercial break, but we're coming right back. I appreciate you, brother. Keep streaming the show. RichValdez.com, Valdez with an S. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Yes, sir. I just want to tell you that I love your show. I listen every day. I think you're a true professional. I think you're one of the best.
America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
And I'm going to make America affordable again. In addition to making it great again, we're going to make it affordable again. And that's going to be starting on day one. Isn't it amazing? They go 3 years and now they say, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. The only good thing that she's flip-flopping, she's the greatest flip-flopper, things that she never even thought of. She probably goes back to her room and gets sick to her stomach when she says what she has to say, because she's a Marxist, she's a fascist, and she never believed. I mean, now she's saying, oh, we want to build a strong border. Where has she been for 3.5 years as we took in 20 million people, many of them horrible criminals? My vision is for a middle class that is once again the envy of the entire world. It's going to happen. It's going to happen fast.
That is El Trumpito at his event in Wisconsin earlier, the event that Tulsi Gabbard told us about on Monday. She was there with him as well. And he says that Kamala Harris is a fascist and a Marxist, and I don't think he's too far off the mark, honestly speaking. I want to get your thoughts on this. Let's go to Dothan, Alabama, WDBT. Check in with Brandon. Go right ahead.
Yes, I was just calling to say, you know, Harris wants to compare her record to Trump. And honestly, that's an absurd statement, because at least Trump made America great again. He boosted the economy, started the border wall, trying to make America safe. Pretty much most of the things that Trump did made America great again. And everything that they want to do in this administration is trying to send us into a depression.
Yeah.
All they want to do is spend money and kill the American dollar. And all Trump wants to do is make America great again and work for everybody. He wants to revive the middle class and reward hard work. And I mean,
nothing wrong with that.
Trump is, yeah. I mean, he's a smart businessman. Yeah, he made some mistakes here and there, but he came off the street as a successful businessman, and has been one of the best politicians that we've seen probably since the Reagan administration.
I'm with you, Brandon. I think you're spot on there. And I agree. And I think he just has to continue to articulate that point. It's Trump versus the media, Trump against the Democrats, Trump against Harris, Trump against Walz. Trump's up against a lot of things. So the more support he gets, the merrier it'll be. Brandon and Dothan, I appreciate it. Big shout out to WDBT. Let us continue. Where do I want to go? Frank, Evergreen, Montana, KOFI. Go right ahead.
Hey,
Frank,
Rich.
hey, how are you?
I looked it up, and
pretty good. I was looking it up in PubMed, also the National Institute of Health, as well as the World Health Organization, about PFAS, forever chemicals, and a large, very large amount of this is in women's beauty products, hair dyes, fingernail polish, lipstick, glow-in-the-dark, like radium, whatever. Just people and their
and I just want to let the audience know if they don't know what forever chemicals are, or PFAS, PFAS. It's polyfluoroalkyl substances. These are a group of chemicals that are resistant to oil, water, heat, grease, and other things, and they're found everywhere, right? Like you're saying, they're found in all these products you mentioned. They're found in rainwater lately. They're found in waterproof clothing. In certain Arctic ice samples, they found them. And it's also been found in the blood of up to 99% of Americans, because these chemicals last forever, which is why they're called forever chemicals. And the scary part of all this is that, once you have it, it doesn't go away. Most recently, somebody told me that you could find this on the black ink that is on those like thermal printed receipts that you get from the store when you go to the store, and they give you a receipt on that little roly paper. It used to be like a purple dot matrix receipt. That was different ink. But the ink that they use for almost like copier ink is apparently includes these PFAS chemicals that last forever and don't leave your body. So yeah, Frank, a lot of people should be concerned.
Yes, especially Republican women. Don't try to emulate the Democrat women with their colored hair and all that, and these. Don't paint yourself like a pig, like Kohala, whatever it's Kalana or whatever it is called. Mala.
That's right, Kamala Harris. Thank you, Frank. I got to run here, but you're right, and that was a good topic. Maybe we'll do a whole segment on that with a forever chemicals expert. Frank in Evergreen, Montana, KOFI. Always a pleasure, and we're getting to the rest of your calls straight after this in the speed round.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. It's the speed round. We're wrapping up. And by the way, tomorrow, try to remind me. I want to tell you about this clip we've got of this pilot that loses her stuff and just starts berating people on a plane. It's a funny story. We'll get to it tomorrow. But right now, it's the speed round. Let's go to Paul, Boise, Idaho, KBFI. Go right ahead.
Thanks, Rich. Yeah, Kamala. There's some things that bother me about her, obviously, that bother all of America. One is that she can no longer really hide that she's a Marxist. I think it's pretty apparent to everybody by the choice she made of her vice president. I think that kind of solidifies it. The one thing that I think she's got kind of a guilty attitude towards her. She's always trying to hide something. Whenever she speaks, she's predisposed.
Right. Well, you know what it is? It's that she doesn't. Right. She never wants to be forthcoming. She'll never just answer whatever they're asking. She's always so I don't know, just resistant to answering the question. Paul, the music means we gotta go. I appreciate the call, my brother. Big shout out to KBFI, Boise, Idaho. And my buddy Joe in Salem, Arkansas, listening on KSAR. Big shout out to you as well. He says Trump will wipe the floor with Kamala Harris and wanted to weigh in on car insurance. Man, we could do that all day. Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Folks, hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night. And God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez.